The Communications and Fundraising Committee has a very holy task. If we are to be accountable in the context of our remit, we need to assert that holiness. The holiness of publicity to touch the hearts of all, the holiness of marketing for the good of the buyer, and the holy honesty of the prayer on day 8. For none of these things are in conflict with the core mission and purpose of the community, nor were they ever. If for anyone publicity and marketing should sound like the wicked way of the world, then read again Jesus' parable of the dishonest steward. We might be children of the light, but children learn by getting their hands dirty. Are we worth leaving that legacy to? Of course we are, but people need to know why, and know we care why. Our selling point is that we really do care, and keep track of members, associates, friends and supporters, and that is a huge task, done unobtrusively through the Glasgow office. Whilst I have to say they are tortured by buskers, all the more reason for the new premises. The Lent Facebook project achieved up to 300 shares. Each one of those means that a whole circle of connected people at least grasped that we exist, doing enough to stay in consciousness without simply becoming irritating, and that's a sensitive balance. Life under the bushel might seem cosy. That fond imagining that it's enough to do or write something wonderful and beautiful without using every means at our disposal to reach an audience, especially a new audience, which might benefit from that experience. The constant question, how to turn interest into offerings that do not cost the interested person nothing. Just up the road, Luss Parish Church has been streaming services and gaining a new audience as well as new support for some years now. For them, it's business as usual rather than some sort of threatening innovation. Of course, there are obstacles, technical obstacles, to getting on with something like this on Iona. But like the standard objection in local churches that it might cost something, technical obstacles are never the only reason. Can we embrace, rather than flee from the changes in what it means to be human in this society? To recognise, for instance, that camera phones are not an annoyance nor a vice, but the way many people appropriate and digest positive experiences. And that's just the pensioners and the ministers on sabbatical. Friendships online are real friendships, every bit as much as paper correspondence or parchment correspondence has been since the Middle Ages, though there's never any less need to preserve with each other sincere charity and peace than in the deceptively public forum of Facebook. In quieter times, perhaps, this committee could afford to sit back and simply receive and gratefully support the huge and conscientious work that is done with small budgets and sparse resources by the staff in Glasgow and elsewhere, subsidised by their commitment. In quieter times, we could sit lightly to our guiding function. But I think that, for instance, acknowledging both the timely need for and the time resources necessary for a relaunch of Coracle, as well as encouraging this to happen, has reminded us of the need for involvement, partnership, rather than just letting things take their course. In publicity and in day-to-day sharing of what the community does, I'm not suggesting that we operate a hierarchy of media, but rather that we encourage whatever we do use to evolve. The recent colour covers on the existing format of Coracle already make the contents more readable and accessible. Appropriate print media are not extinct. Communications are a unique partnership, and in no sense is the work merely subcontracted. Staff are part of the movement, and a number of staff are themselves members and associates. The committee, when it meets, observes the tip of a growing, moving iceberg, now that fundraisers and a programme's development worker have been appointed. When we meet, we know that staff will have done all the work. But now there is an additional pressure to give direction, an additional drive to active partnership, to err on the side of the visible. And I hope this is a direction that the whole movement will embrace. I can't see, now that the community is seeking the goodwill and the substantial good gifts of others to transform our operations on the island and the mainland, that communications and fundraising should do other than stir you up to be, more than ever before, a community of communicators. Communications and fundraising has had a very high membership turnover over the time I've been associated with it. Not that folk are fleeing the convener, but rather that this committee engages with the accelerating culture change from the almost exclusively written and printed word to the contemporary communication environment of many different media. We may be moving on from places which seem to be secure and unassailable. Very few people now buy CDs rather than look for music downloaded with just 1 or 2 mouse clicks. That is, if anyone's still using a mouse, rather than campily swiping at a smartphone or a tablet, and that is just the pensioners and the ministers on sabbatical. The deadlines for worship leaders are so close to their events they need to be able to copy, paste and adapt. Photocopying, scanning or typing out word by word are drying out somewhere up Mount Ararat. Physical books with a huge cost in terms of production and stockpiling, well, these have evolved a new identity as beautiful objects. The time is very long past when a serious or worthy book had to have a really boring cover to be respected. The same is true of everything we do. For a movement with so much laughter, we don't half suffer from worthiness. Whether you like your material in a form you can touch and smell, or the digital convenience of extreme portability, for there's only so much you can stuff into your case on the way back. But then, what if having bought the hands-on book you had special access to a digital copy too? Make life good for those willing to be your friends. Don't be content with being children of the light. And speaking to those working in our vital shop in Iona, there is a consciousness that everything physical needs to work very hard, to be high contrast, literally eye-catching, if they're not to become functionally invisible to any new market, even if fans and regulars appear to lap up what looks like more of the same. Just as words on a screen need to be high contrast and in a legible font, there's a very small envelope of opportunity to say, here is something good. We do now have a media policy. We do now keep track of occasional things that go off message. We have, like every responsible organisation, a procedure for dealing with difficult news and a leader trained in dealing with the strange demands of the press, as well as those ready to step in and represent us with integrity and authority when needed. Can we embrace partnership, diversity, and a coherent unity? Can we communicate?